Lesson 18, Shivaji's War Strategy. My dear children, we have seen in the previous lessons how Shivaji Maharaj established Swaraj, and there are innumerable things that he has done to gain this Swaraj based on fair play and justice. Now let us see what is the reason behind his success. So today's lesson we are going to learn about the war strategy of Shivaji. Shivaji's valor and courage. Now, Shivaji Maharaj was only 15 years old, and in the previous lessons, we have seen that as a small boy, he, along with his Mavla friends, he went to the temple of Raireshwar, and there they took an oath of Swaraj in the temple. That was the time he was only 15 years old. And then we see that towards the end, he died at the age of 50 at Raigad, which was the first capital of Shivaji Maharaj. That means within a short span of 35 years, Shivaji Maharaj displayed a number of qualities of his. What are they? It is incomparable valor and statesmanship. Now, what do you mean by these words? Now, these words tell us that Shivaji was a person who was very good in setting up a government, in running a government, in making policies which would bring the kingdom in a situation where it would flourish. A person who is wise, skillful, and not only that, he was respected by everyone. And therefore, Shivaji was successful in establishing Hindavi Swaraj. All throughout his life, he fought many battles, led many campaigns, and thereby he kept the enemy away from him and threatened them at many occasions. Each time, Shivaji would think what is good according to the situation. Now, for example, if he saw that the enemy had to be destroyed by a tactics which is called as diplomacy. For example, he did not want to meet them face to face. He would use his skills in such a way that he would not face them on an open battle. But sometimes he had to do so. Sometimes he had to meet the enemy on a battlefield. Now here are a few examples how Shivaji was a brave warrior. He was a great statesman, as I explained the meaning of statesmanship, of a statesman. What is the meaning? Again, I just repeated, a person who can skillfully take care of his government. He is respected by all, he is wise, and he can take command over his whole territory. So that is the beautiful quality of Shivaji Maharaj. Now we have seen that in the process of establishing Swaraj, Shivaji Maharaj had to defeat many enemies. Now, in the earlier lessons, we saw that at the court of Adil Shah of Bijapur, everybody was angry because Shivaji was fighting the battles and he was establishing, conquering one fort after the other. And finally, they wanted to put an end to Shivaji's move. What did they do? On one day, in the court, Badi Sahiba, that is the queen herself, came and she asked the whole court, who is the person who could bring Shivaji dead or alive? And at that time, Afzal Khan, who was a very mighty Sardar, he came forward and he accepted the challenge. Now this Afzal Khan was a brave man, a very stout warrior, and it was very difficult for Shivaji to face him face to face. But Shivaji used his diplomacy, he used his skills, and he brought Afzal Khan to meet him face to face. And we see in the Shamiana how Shivaji kills him when Afzal Khan acts smart with him. Shivaji kills him with his bichua. And another incident, when it was dark and pouring, the rain was very bad, heavily raining at that time, what happened? The Siddhi Johar, who laid a siege, and Shivaji was cut up inside the fort and he could not move out. In that dark night, Shivaji made plans and he sent 2 palanquins, and in one, Shivaji escaped by a route wherein he would not get caught, and another one was sent in a route where Siddhi Jawahar's army would catch him. This is how Siddhi Jawahar was deceived in this incident and Shivaji escaped. In another incident, we see that Shaista Khan was sent to revenge Shivaji, to put an end to Shivaji. Then what did he do? He sent his uncle. Who sent his uncle? Aurangzeb sent his uncle Shaista Khan to fight against Shivaji, and this Shaista Khan took hold of Lal Mahal, Shivaji's own house in Pune. But Shivaji entered into Lal Mahal and he cut off the fingers of Shaista Khan, and Shaista Khan ran away from there. He escaped from there, saving his life. He said, "Oh my God, I've left my fingers, I've got my fingers cut, but let me save my life." So these are the incidents. Yet another time we see how Shivaji escaped from Aurangzeb's prison at Agra under the pretext of sending sweets to the sadhus because he was ill, he was sick. And these are the qualities that Shivaji Maharaj displayed as a statesman, and he was successful in all that he did. Shivaji Maharaj, therefore, is a person of valor and courage. Loyalty of his Sardars. Now, Shivaji Maharaj was a brave man. He was fearless. He was a warrior who was really determined to put an end to the enemy. Now, he himself had these qualities. He did not keep it to himself. He also trained, molded his Sardars to be fearless. And these Sardars who were trained by Shivaji had a lot of devotion to Shivaji Maharaj, and therefore they were ready to give their lives. We have seen in many incidences in the past lesson how all the Sardars who were under Shivaji wanted to give their life and save Shivaji's life. Here are a few examples of such people. Now here we have Veer Baji Pasalkar, who sacrificed his life in Khalad Belsar battle near the fort of Purandar. Then yet again there was another incident where Shahaji Raje, he had asked Kanhoji Jidhe to help Shivaji in establishing Swaraj. He was asked to gather the Mawal Deshmukhs. Now these people, that is the Mawal Deshmukhs, they always supported Shivaji till the end of their lives in establishing Swaraj. Firangoji Narsala is yet another person who fought the battle of Chakkan, and he also was determined to fight for Shivaji till the end of his life. So likewise we see when Siddhi Jawahar besieged the fort of Panhala, we had another person, Siddhi Hilal, and his son who fought against Shivaji Maharaj, alongside Shivaji Maharaj against Siddhi Jawahar. So these are the ways in which Shivaji had many loyal Sardars under him. Now to safeguard Shivaji Maharaj's life, we saw that Baji Prabhu in the battle of Godkind, he said, "Maharaj, you go ahead. I know that your life is very precious, and so we are there. Why should you fight this battle?" And he was waiting at the pass to see that the enemies don't enter and cross the way so that Shivaji Maharaj could reach safely to Vishalgarh, and therefore Godkind became Pavan King in the history of Swaraj. Likewise, we have Thanaji, whose marriage of the son had to be conducted, and so he was to give invitations to Shivaji Maharaj and Jijamata. But when he came to know that Shivaji is going to fight a battle to win Kondana, he said, "Raiba, that is his son's wedding, can wait, but the marriage of Kondana had to be done first." So this is how we have loyal Sardars who worked for Shivaji. Senapati Pratap Rao Gujar became a martyr in fighting Adil Shahi Sardar Bahlol Khan. Now, this is another incident where we have another Sardar who laid down his life. Martyr means a person who dies for the cause of fighting a battle. Now, we have another person called as Himbir Rao Mohite. He was the commander of his army. And there are yet innumerable incidents other than those mentioned in our text. Now we have Sena Nayak Sidhoji Nimbalkar, who gave his life to fight the enemy during the Jalna campaign. So these are the examples. There are innumerable of them, as I told you, who were so dedicated and loyal, and they offered their services to Shivaji Maharaj. Shivaji's guerrilla tactics. Now, my dear children, Shivaji's guerrilla tactics is one of the best and the unique tactics which Shivaji Maharaj used to fight against his enemy. Now, this guerrilla tactics means the soldiers would hide themselves in the rocks or in the bushes, in the forests, and they knew how to attack the enemy. It was a skill which they used, which only Shivaji Maharaj's army would know. Now, what is this and why did he use this guerrilla tactics? Now, Shivaji Maharaj's enemies were very powerful and they had lot of troops, that is the soldiers, to fight for them. They had ammunitions, weapons, artilleries, and they had all possible the means of things to fight against Shivaji, all the equipments. And so Shivaji Maharaj's army was very small in comparison to the armies of the enemies, and they were simple people. So Shivaji Maharaj could not at times face this huge army of the enemies. No, now Shivaji Maharaj was very clever. What did he do? He knew the local terrain, that is, he knew the place of the things where he was staying, that is the Maharashtra plateau, the hilly areas, everything, the forts which were there, everything was well known to Shivaji. And therefore, he knew all the routes, he knew all the ways in which to reach to the forest, the ghats, the hills, the deep valleys, everything was well known to him, which the enemy troops did not know. And the enemy troops had lot of arms and ammunitions, I told you. So when they came to fight against Shivaji, they carried all these equipments which were so heavy and they could not move fast. They had to carry these heavy things, which became difficult for them to reach Shivaji. At the same time, Shivaji Maharaj's soldiers, they did not carry anything heavy like them. They only had a sword and a spear to fight against the enemy, and therefore they could move fast. Rapid means quickly, and they could get about the hilly countries with great speed. And the Maratha soldiers were also tough and swift-footed, that is, they could move on the hills, move from one place to another very quickly. So they were very skilled. They were very, very strong, physically tough. They were tough, that means they were physically strong. So Shivaji Maharaj used all these qualities of his soldiers in fighting war against the enemies. Therefore, Shivaji Maharaj is rightly called as the military genius. Now, Shivaji Maharaj not only used this physical strength of his soldiers, he also did another great thing. That is, he set up an intelligence department. Now, the intelligence department has to give Shivaji Maharaj information about the enemy troops, which was done very, very skillfully by the men in the intelligence department. They were very, very organized. They would give messages to Shivaji very fast about the enemy troops, and therefore Shivaji could organize surprise attacks on the enemies, and they would be destroyed. And by the time the enemies reformed and they said, "Oh God, Shivaji has come to fight against us," and they would collect their troops to fight against Shivaji's army, what would they do? They would already vanish from the place, that is, using the technique called as guerrilla warfare, and they would destroy the enemies, and they would also move out from that place quickly. So this was the benefit of the guerrilla tactics that the soldiers knew. Hill forts. Now, Shivaji Maharaj's war strategy greatly depended on the hill forts. Now, my dear children, we know that the hill forts is something which all of the kings would like to have. Why? Because this hill fort was surrounded by hills which were difficult to enter. The enemy had to take a lot of trouble to come to this fort. and therefore it gave a good control over the surrounding areas. So if a king had a hill fort, it was very, very good for the king to administer the place, to take care of the surroundings, because it was well guarded. You can keep a watch over everything. And such hill forts, there were also good ammunitions and food was stocked in these hill forts. Such a hill fort can even keep the enemy for 2 years. Like if an enemy surrounds the fort, then the soldiers along with Shivaji Maharaj or the person in charge of the fort can keep away the enemy for such a long period as 2 years. Now sometimes what would happen if the soldiers went to fight against an enemy and they found that the enemy was very strong, they could come back to the hill fort, so they can save their lives also. So that is why we see that Shivaji Maharaj established Rajgarh as his first capital. And then at Raigad, and what happened? Not in any city of the plains, but it was a hill fort that Shivaji chose to be his capital. Defense of the forts. Now, defense means to take care against the enemy, guard the forts. What is the thing that Shivaji Maharaj did? Shivaji Maharaj appointed men of different castes and communities to guard the fort. That means he made no distinction between caste or languages or creed. So he had everyone treated equally, those people who worked under him, and therefore the work of the forts was carried out smoothly. Now the enemy did not bring about any treachery, that is, they couldn't do anything wrong against Shivaji, because Shivaji's forts were well guarded, and therefore it was always well protected because of the foresight of Shivaji Maharaj. Chauthai. Now, the efficient administration is possible only when the treasury is full. What is the meaning of treasury? That means the money which the government or the kingdom or the king has in his treasury. So Shivaji Maharaj was also very, very clever. He also knew this and he would always keep his treasury full. What did he do to keep the treasury full? Shivaji Maharaj raised money by carrying out raids on the enemy territory. And we saw in the previous lessons also how he carried on a raid at Surat, and then he brought a lot of things from there which could help him in buying arms and ammunitions. And so many other times we see how Shivaji Maharaj used to carry on raids. Now, he generally collected 1/4 of the total revenue of the enemy territory, and this 1/4 of the amount that he collected was called as Chauthai. That means Chauthai itself means 1/4. That is the word which is used here. And so Shivaji Maharaj always collected them regularly from this enemy territory, and whoever gave him properly, they were not troubled. They would not be having any problem from Shivaji's side. So this was a good example of his statesmanship. Shivaji's navy. Now we know that Shivaji Maharaj also had some enemies from the sea. Yes or no? Yes. So this was one of Shivaji's foresight. He was the first one to build navy. That is, he built strong forts like Sindhudurg and Vijayadurg to keep away the danger which he knew he would face from Siddhi, from Portuguese and from the English. And so therefore, Shivaji built a beautiful navy and good forts along the sea coast so that he could keep a good watch over his administration. Now Shivaji also had to face a lot of trouble, and he had to face many hurdles, barriers in the way of establishing Swaraj. That is what is the meaning of the words which are given in the lesson. Shivaji weathered many storms and steered the ship of Swaraj for safety. So though he faced many difficulties, hurdles, barriers, but he was a person full of valor and statesmanship so that he could go ahead in his mission of establishing Swaraj. Thank you.